very responsible budget.
I call the Honourable Member Julianne Genter. Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. Talofa lava.
Mai oi.
I'd like to start actually by responding to some comments by the Honourable Phil Heatley and Dr. Paul Hutchinson.
That would be me.
Thank you so much for your acknowledgement, but I think those members misremember what happens. The instigation of the home insulation project was actually entirely the idea and initiative of my brilliant colleague, former co-leader Jeanette Fitzsimons, who actually convinced the former Labour government to fund it with $1 billion, which is significantly more than what the national government ended up doing. And the year...
point of order, the Honourable Minister Phil Heatley.
I'm not quite sure how to test that, but that's never been reflected in the books. It was
No, member will be seated. This is a debatable issue. The member, I'm on my feet. The member, I'm on my feet. This is a general debate, not a general debate, but this is the reaction to the budget. It is a wide-ranging debate, and the issue that she's speaking about is debatable. Any following member from the National Party can refute it, or otherwise. I call the Honourable Member, order, on my feet. The member can refute it, and in response, the member is entitled to say what she likes, within reason. I call the Honourable Member Julianne Genter.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. I think the Honourable Phil Heatley will find in media reports shortly after the 2008 election that Prime Minister John Key said that he would be axing the Home Insulation Fund, and it was only the persistent Jeanette Fitzsimons who convinced the government to take up this smart idea, and I invite the government, actually, to take up more smart green ideas, because we have many. When one considers the lost opportunities in this budget, it is quite easy to feel rather depressed that most New Zealanders are not going to be better off, and certainly not future generations of New Zealanders. But it's nonetheless a pleasure for me to take the call, because I am actually very enthusiastic about the opportunities that we have before us. We have great opportunities, particularly in the area of transport. So one of the easiest ways to reduce our debt, to improve our economic productivity, to reduce household costs, as well as get better outcomes in health, in air and water quality, is to reform our transportation market. So a few facts. Our transportation system is costing us a whole lot of money. Look, this isn't political. It's just a fact. It's costing us a lot of money. So last year, New Zealand households and businesses, the members on the government side can ask the library, parliamentary library, for this advice, or this information. So last year, New Zealand households and businesses spent $11 billion on imported cars and fuel to run them. And this is a huge contribution to our current account deficit, and it's ongoing. Then there's a huge cost of off-street parking, which has been shifted from the transport sector to the real estate sector. And that cost is conservatively estimated at $10 billion annually. $10 billion because of bad government regulation. And I would think that that government would be very interested in reducing some of the bad government regulation, which is imposing huge costs on developers and on businesses and on households. And I invite the government to inquire and get some information about how they can improve economic productivity by reducing bad government regulation. It's not just households and businesses and the real estate sector who are spending billions on our transport system. Transport spending is also the single largest outlay of local government in New Zealand. So if the government is concerned about reducing rates and confining local government to how much they can raise rates, they should probably look at what changes to the transportation sector could limit the amount of rates that local government needs to raise. And of course, central government is continuing to spend billions every year, about $3 billion from the National Land Transport Fund on capital investment and operations in transport. But for some mysterious reason, the government lists infrastructure investment as one of the things they're doing to improve economic productivity. And the vast majority of their national infrastructure plan is a new spend on state highways. So it's $12 to $14 billion over the next 10 years. If the government listened, maybe they would understand what I was saying, but you're not listening, you're just talking. So, sorry. The mystery, Mr. Speaker, the mystery is how these motorways are going to improve economic productivity, because there's actually no evidence. There's no evidence to suggest they're going to improve economic productivity. In fact, there is a lot of evidence that suggests they will do the exact opposite. And we heard from the Minister of Finance last week in the House, in response to questions from Dr. Russell Norman, that these motorways were never subject to Treasury's Better Business Case guidelines. The National Party campaigned on these motorways without any investigation of the costs or the benefits or the impact on the economy, and they have massively reprioritized the entire national transport budget just to pay for them. And that, it says it right here. So here's the budget plan for 4 years, the 4-year budget plan from the Ministry of Transport, and it says that the roads of so-called national significance or national party significance, funding has been sourced from within the National Land Transport Fund by a major reprioritization of expenditure. So what this means is that in order to pay for these political projects where there's no evidence that they're going to have a positive impact on the economy, we are going to be spending less money on road policing, we're spending less money on local roads, we're spending less money on road maintenance and renewals, and very, very little money on smart public transport and walking and cycling. So it's a question of priorities. It's a question of priorities. And the truth is, I'm trying to get to it, Order. Mr. Speaker, but the government is apparently not interested in listening. So I think it's easy for New Zealanders and government members who don't understand anything about transport or traffic engineering to think, oh, well, sure, another motorway couldn't hurt. It'd come in handy if there was a crash or a congestion on other roads. It'll mean I'm less likely to get stuck in a traffic jam. It'll mean that we can get out of Wellington if there's an earthquake. Except that's not the case. That's just not the case. Motorways have never reduced congestion. Motorways, not in Auckland, not in anywhere else in the world. And there is a paradigm shift, and it's an opportunity for the government. This is an opportunity for the government. A paradigm shift in how we define and address transport problems. So look at Southern California, for example. No region has spent more on motorways than Southern California. And what has led to? The worst road congestion in the entire United States. More road crashes per capita than anywhere else. Longer commutes, a huge burden of under-maintained infrastructure, a stagnant economy, not to mention huge costs to households just to get around, and they have extremely poor land affordability. And it's completely understandable why this has happened. It's because the traditional approach to traffic engineering prioritizes the flow of vehicles. It doesn't look at the movement of people and goods. It doesn't look at what the opportunity cost is of using up 30 to 50% of the land in our towns and cities just on transport infrastructure. It's really funny to hear from government MPs that there's wastefulness in the public transport because sometimes buses, which are running all times of the day, are either really crowded at peak time and maybe near empty at other parts of the day. But that's a network that enables people to move around a city all day, and it's far more efficient than the unbalanced vehicle-oriented system we have right now. So what about the wastefulness of nearly empty arterials and motorways outside peak? What about the land in our town centers lying fallow as empty off-street car parks that exist only because district plan regulations force developers to put them there? Mr. Speaker, members of the House, I invite you to walk along Upper Simon Street in Auckland at 8 p.m. at night and look over the tarmac-covered landscape that is nearly empty of anything at all. That is some of the most valuable land in our city. And yet it is not used for an economically productive use most of the time. It is not used for commerce, trade, dwellings, recreation. We have given over huge amounts of highly valuable land in our towns and cities to our transport system, and the traffic engineers and transport economists who do the modeling and evaluation of these projects never include this massive opportunity cost in the assessment of projects. The budget shows that even though the government says that they understand that public transport is a cheaper way to reduce congestion and to move more people and goods, they're not actually putting their money where their mouths are. So this, and it's just in the last year, it's going to get worse over the next 10 years. The red bit is how much they're spending on public transport in Auckland, Wellington, and Christchurch combined, and this is the amount they're spending on state highways. So it's unbalanced. It's unbalanced, and it doesn't give New Zealanders a choice, and it's costing us a whole lot of money. Every other part of our transport system, as I've said, is languishing under the National Party's transport program, and this is imposing huge costs on local government. The Green Party has done a very robust analysis, and I invite government members to sit down with me. I'm happy to explain it to them. We found we can save money. We can spend less on expensive new infrastructure. We can use our existing infrastructure better. We can free up valuable land in our town centres for development, and we can move more people and goods at lower cost. And this won't just be 100 times better for our economy.
I'm sorry to interrupt the honourable member. Her time has expired.